And Pogba leaves for McTominay! Magnificent! It's Moraes, he's done it again! He has fizzed that into the bottom corner. Vardy for Chowdhury. And set for Madison! He is one bright young thing! Alisson saw Salah running from his own half, so onside here, Mo Salah. Salah to settle it! In front of the Kop! There's no feeling like that feeling! And now you've got to believe them. You have got to believe them.
Hey guys, welcome back to the 3PL podcast. With just under 10 games left this season, it's all starting to spice up pretty nicely in the Premier League with permutations at the top and bottom of the table. So without further ado, let's get straight into it in our first match preview, which is this Friday coming up, which is Everton facing Tottenham. 7th versus 8th in the Premier League. Two teams who have really struggled for form lately. Two teams who would have been expecting to finish a lot higher this season. But ultimately, they're struggling a little bit. Both of them. The recent form for both clubs has been pretty poor, especially Tottenham. That loss at the weekend will hurt them a lot, in my opinion. I thought they would go into that game looking to push themselves up the table, get a win against a club above them. But again, we saw, as we've seen quite a lot recently, is that Tottenham just aren't the side that they were at the start of the season. Just look very weak in defence, not scoring many goals. And yeah, I thought that loss was really, really harming, I think, to the rest of their season. Coming into this game against Everton, who aren't on great form themselves. I mean, they've just drawn 0-0 with Brighton. Before that, a 1-1 draw with Crystal Palace. And then they're without a win in 4 games now. And their home form, for me, is the main problem, I think, because all season we've seen them pick up great results on the road, but then they just haven't backed them up at home. And I think the stat is they've picked up only 18 points at home, whilst they've picked up 30 points away from home. So that's a massive differential between home form and away form. If they had anything like solid home form, they'd be in a good chance for Champions League football this season, which is something I'm sure a lot of their fans were expecting in December time. But it's not panned out that way. And yeah, these two clubs are going to get lost in the shuffle if they're not too careful. So I think it's the real big game for both clubs.
Yeah, you feel like this is a game that both teams need to win if they're really going to have a chance of getting Europa League football this year. Definitely if they want to get Champions League football, because that's going to be a real push if they don't start picking up points. We're at that stage of the season now where you can almost see the end in sight. We're not at the point where you can say, oh, it's a shame we've lost that game, but there's still a chance to pick up points here and here and here. Because every game that you drop points in now, you're running out of time to pick up the points that you need. And as you said, they're both teams really poor form in the last few games. They got 1 win between them in their last 8. Everton really struggling to score goals. Tottenham scoring a few more goals, but still struggling really to get any sort of convincing victories. Whereas, a few weeks ago they were looking like a really good team. I feel like both teams have had very, very similar seasons to an extent, where they've had times where they've looked like absolute contenders for the top 4 places, and then they've just hit really, really poor runs of form where they've looked like almost like teams in disarray, especially Tottenham. Looking at the post-match interviews after that game against Manchester United, the demeanour of the players, especially Heung-min Son, just looked absolutely defeated, looked like he didn't really want to be playing in that team anymore. There's obviously the talk of Harry Kane potentially leaving if they don't get Champions League football. That's going to unsettle the dressing room. I feel like it's a really, really poor time in that Tottenham dressing room at the moment, and you wonder whether Mourinho's got the charisma or the tactical nous these days to actually be able to get that team up and firing again for what is a huge game for them in the course of their season. Realistically, if Tottenham finish 8th or 9th this season, that's a massive failure of a season for them, considering the squad they've got, the money they've invested in the manager they've brought in, the money put into the stadium. It's going to be a real issue for them. So massive game for both teams. Really, really needs to be a victory for each of them. And obviously that can't be the case. One of them's going to come out massively disappointed, or if it's a draw, I think they're both going to be massively disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem, I guess, with this stage of the season. You really have to get wins in games like this, and both teams will be targeting a win in this game. And obviously with Tottenham's form lately, it's just not looking all that likely. And I think, like you said, there'll be players there who will be wanting Champions League football this season. Harry Kane, Son, they'll both be striving to play in Champions League football. That's what they want. That's what, as a footballer, you want to play at the highest level. But at the moment, they're 6 points off Champions League football, with clubs above them like Chelsea, Liverpool, West Ham even, who look much better placed to get Champions League football. So for the players in that team, it must be quite disheartening to be so far off the pace, and with a manager who seemingly doesn't have too much more to give in the dressing room. I think he's obviously pissed off a few players at Tottenham. That's very evident with the lineup he puts out every week now, missing some really big names. For me, I just don't really see how he's going to turn it around. I think Mourinho is one of those managers who has one way of managing, and if it doesn't go down well with certain players, then they get exiled from the squad. And we've seen that with so many players this season. Gareth Bale, for one, was out for half the season. Dele Alli's been out for the entire season pretty much because he's fell out with the manager. So for Tottenham, it just doesn't exactly sit well in terms of squad harmony. I don't think there is any left there, which is why I kind of edge towards Everton in this fixture. I do think Ancelotti will probably just about have the tactical nous over Mourinho. I think they're two very experienced managers, and I think actually Ancelotti has probably got the slightly better tactical minds. Maybe might be able to rile Mourinho up a little bit, and I think that'll probably be just about enough to get Everton the win, which is why I've gone for a 2-1 Everton win. I do think, even with some of the injuries they've had, I think Calvert-Lewin's a doubt for this game. I do think they'll just about have enough to get past a very low morale Tottenham team. I don't think they'll be able to get up for this game after that defeat against Manchester United. I think it's, almost going to be detrimental for the rest of their season. So I can really see this, unfortunately, going south for Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if they do lose this game, it will be a massive blow for them. Two defeats on the bounce against teams that they will be viewing as teams they need to beat if they want to be up there with the best. I've actually gone for a 1-1 draw in this game. I don't think either team's going to really have enough to win the other over, especially if Calvert-Lewin doesn't play. I think that makes a massive difference to Everton. Yes, they've got some other very talented players in their attacking positions, but he's a very, very useful player for them. And I think he makes more space for Richarlison. He draws players away from Richarlison, which opens him up a lot more. And the same for Rodriguez. He gives Rodriguez more space and time to find those sort of killer passes that we know he's capable of. So without him, I think they're going to really struggle. One question I had for you, which I was sort of thinking about earlier today, obviously a lot of talk of Harry Kane moving away from Tottenham. I feel like the conversation as to where he's going to go has sort of been beaten to death a bit with the amount of that's been talked about. But one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot is how Tottenham go about replacing him. Who do they bring in? Because they don't have another striker really that can fill that role. And I wonder whether, maybe someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's obviously playing for his opponents on at the weekend, do you think he would fit the mould of someone that Tottenham would potentially be looking to bring in as a replacement for him going forward?
I think it's like a near on impossible job to replace Harry Kane at this point. For what he's done for Tottenham over countless seasons now is something you can't replace. I don't think any other striker in the world is going to bring you 30 goals a season for Tottenham. And replacing him is going to be extremely difficult. Personally, I don't think Calvert-Lewin's anywhere near his level. Yes, they'll be in the same England squad this summer, most likely, but in my eyes, Harry Kane is leagues above the levels that Calvert-Lewin can reach. I don't think there are too many strikers in the world who will come in and do a job for Tottenham like Harry Kane has done. He's going to be extremely difficult to replace if that is the case this summer and he does leave. I can only probably think of 2 or 3 players who will probably come into Tottenham and do a similar job. One of them's almost unachievable for them in terms of Haaland. I think he's probably the logical one that people will look to, but why would he go to Tottenham if they're not playing Champions League football? And the other is someone like Diego Costa, maybe, who's been exiled from many different teams in the past, played under Mourinho before if he is still the manager. That would be a logical move for them, but ultimately trying to replace Harry Kane is almost an impossible task. So I don't envy Mourinho if he is the one that has to get the notebook out in the summer and try and note down some targets, because it's going to be almost impossible to replace him. But I guess the one positive to take out of it is that they will get a lot of money for Harry Kane wherever he goes. So reinvesting that money will be absolutely crucial for them going forwards.
Yeah, they've got to get it right, haven't they? They can't afford to waste that money like they did when they got that huge fee for Gareth Bale. They squandered that on too many average to poor players. And this time round, you've really got to view it as if they sell Kane for big money, it's got to be to bring in somebody else on big money who can, if not match what Kane can do, at least try and come close to it. Because otherwise, you take Kane out of that team and it's just a completely different picture. So, yeah, as you said, I certainly don't envy the management there. That's going to be a really tricky job and a massive conundrum for them coming up in the summer. Okay, moving on to the second game of the weekend, Saturday 12:30 kickoff sees Newcastle take on West Ham at St James's Park. Newcastle have got a couple of really good results over the last couple of fixtures. They obviously beat Burnley and they picked up a 2-2 draw against Tottenham, who we've just been speaking about. Those results, combined with a few other draws that they've picked up over the last sort of few weeks going back, have actually put them in a really good position to avoid relegation, where a few weeks back, I think we were all looking at them as potentials for the drop, whereas they've started to make a bit of a gap between themselves and that bottom 3 now. And then obviously they're taking on West Ham, who are playing some ridiculously high-intensity games at the moment. The last 3 fixtures are 3-3 against Arsenal, 3-2 against Wolves and 3-2 against Leicester. All 3 games have gone 3-0 up in, and they've nearly thrown it away in all 3 games as well. So goods and bads in there. Obviously the good being that the points have been won, but there's obviously some cause for concern, especially with the high number of injuries that have been picked up now missing Michail Antonio, Declan Rice and Aaron Creswell now sort of almost certainly ruled out for a few weeks. That's 3 of sort of the best players in that team ruled out now for the key stage of the run into the end of the season. So as much as Newcastle will potentially be a welcome opponent in that they're not sort of the hardest opponents to face in this situation, there's also the potential that with those injuries and perhaps some fatigue coming in from the intensity of those last few games, that Newcastle could see an opportunity there to actually get a win that really would pull them away from the relegation zone and could potentially, in doing so, put a massive dent in West Ham's European hopes.
Yeah, on paper, this doesn't look like much of a contest, but actually it's a much bigger game than it appears, in my opinion. I mean, both teams have a huge amount to play for this season. Newcastle, Premier League survival, and then you've got West Ham, who are chasing that elusive Champions League spot. And it should be an easy game to call, really, because West Ham have been in great form, like you said, who've been playing really well, albeit the games have been a bit nervy to watch, but getting the result regardless and grinding out really important victories against good teams is something that, is a hallmark of any team who wants to reach the highest level of the Premier League. So it's been impressive to watch the last couple of weeks to see grind out results against Leicester, especially. I thought that was one of the more impressive wins. And then Newcastle, obviously, a couple of weeks ago, we had completely written them off. Even last week, I can remember talking about, it'd almost be beneficial for them to be relegated this season. But with that comeback win against Burnley, I mean, everything changes for them. The complexion, their outlook. They've now gone 6 points clear of the relegation zone with Fulham's loss, and a couple more wins and they'll be thinking they're safe, because ultimately Fulham aren't winning games, and they really had to be winning games at this point in the season, and they just haven't been. And Newcastle, every now and then, are going to pick up a win. We've seen that. So for a couple more wins, and they'll be safe. And is that a successful season? I'm not too sure, but they'll be happy that they get Premier League survival at least. And this game especially, I think they'll be targeting, because like you've said, whilst you've been playing very well and getting results in the last couple of games, I think those injuries are going to start to really hinder you. I think you can only plug the holes for so long. You've got players coming in, like Mark Noble came in to replace Declan Rice, but then you've got to find someone else now to come in and replace Creswell. 2 players who are almost indispensable for you this season. Probably your 2-star players this season, arguably, Declan Rice and Creswell. So replacing them will be key, and then seeing how you do as a result of those 2 players not playing for the run-in is going to be absolutely crucial. You'll be relying almost solely on Jesse Lingard to keep scoring. His goal record has been, quite frankly, ridiculous since he's turned up at West Ham. I mean, I don't know what he was doing at Man United to not be playing, but he's shown just how good he can be on his day. And, for 4 or 5 games in a row now, he's been the most creative player on the pitch. He's come up against some really good sides in Arsenal, Wolves. Arguably, he's already got his ticket on the plane to the Euros. So, yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to watch. I guess for your sake, I kind of hope that Jesse Lingard can kind of be the one to propel you up the table and keep you in 4th place. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to how well you manage these injuries. And really, if you can do that, then I don't see any reason why you can't go on to finish in the top 4 or the top 5. But I think it's going to be a struggle. And this game against Newcastle isn't one to be taken lightly, in my opinion.
No, and I think if, as you say, if we can sort of get over the fact we've got these injuries and carry on picking up results, and that's going to be destined to get a European place at the end of the season. But teams are sort of judged based on how they perform over a whole season, rightly so. And West Ham have, I think, been one of the more consistent teams across the season. There's been some poor results, but we haven't gone through an injury crisis like this yet. And we're one of the few teams that hasn't suffered an injury crisis at any point of the season. There's only a few teams in the league that can say that, because there's been a huge number this year. We're not the only team to suffer losing key players, so I don't think there'll be any West Ham fans out there that will be going, "Oh, we've been hard done by, this is unfair." It's just the nature of the way the game is at the moment. But it will be a real test to see how we adapt to it. The only bit of positive news is a couple of the previously injured players seem to be coming back into the team. Masuaku's obviously rejoined the squad over the last couple of weeks. Ogbonna is apparently due to rejoin the defence next week, potentially in this fixture. Obviously, that could be the natural replacement for Creswell, who was obviously playing as a left-sided centre-back. If Ogbonna comes in and plays there, it gives Masuaku a bit more freedom to push forward, because Ogbonna's obviously more of a defensive asset in that position. So it'll be really interesting to see how the team shapes up against Newcastle. And if we can come out the other side of this game with 3 points, then I think there'll be a lot of fans that start to get looking at plane tickets to certain European cities for September, October time, just to see what might be available. But there's still a long way to go. It might only be 7 games, but that's still a massive, massive challenge to overcome to get to that stage. But I am going to be optimistic. I've gone for a 2-1 win. I do think we should be able to beat Newcastle, who we've consistently said have been really poor this year. So I think for me to sort of do episode after episode saying how terrible Newcastle are and then predict them to beat West Ham would be a bit of a strange thing to do. So I feel like I've got no other choice but to predict 3 points for West Ham.
Yeah, I'll be going with you. And yeah, I've actually gone for the same result because a 2-1 win to me just seems the logical outcome. I think Newcastle obviously improved. The last couple of results have shown as much that they've been putting in battling performances. They came back from 1 down against Burnley, came back to draw against Tottenham. You can see they haven't lost the fight yet. They still want to be in the mix. They still want to try and pull themselves out of danger. And I think this is a great opportunity for them to do so. And I expect them to give you a pretty hard game. But ultimately, you do have a stronger starting 11. You have the better form. You have Champions League football within reach. And I think, David Moyes would be stupid to let up at this point. So I do expect you to get another positive result. And another win in this game, does put you in a very good place with the remaining games. So yeah, fingers crossed for you. Jesse Lingard can do it once again. Okay, moving on then. We have Wolves against rock bottom Sheffield United. Sheffield United sides who are doing nothing but losing games at the moment. I think we finally got to that stage now where they've given up on the Premier League football and they're going to start to refocus towards the Championship in next season. And they're coming up against Wolves, who have been improving lately, but up until this narrow win against Fulham, they'd been dropping points against teams that they should be dropping points against. I think West Ham was a very tight game and they probably could have got a point in that one, but the win against Fulham showed their grit. They kept a clean sheet for the first game in a long time. And I think that last minute goal for them will just boost them in confidence. The way they won that game to see out Fulham, who did battle in that game to try and get a winner, but Wolves on the day just proved that they were better than that, and they kept out Fulham and managed to get the 3 points, which I think was huge for them. Unfortunately, in the process, they lost Neto to a season-ending injury, which is unfortunate for them because they do have a lot of good players now on the sidelines. He joins, obviously, Ruben Neves and Raul Jimenez, so it's going to be difficult for them to provide the same goal threat that they've had for the last couple of games. I think it's a positive for them that they have Podence back because he's one of those players we saw through the first couple of months of the season can really provide that spark, so they'll be looking to him for their creative output now. But I think you can't look beyond Wolves in this game. I mean, Sheffield United, in my opinion, have given up on the league this season. I don't expect them to win too many more games, if any, and I think this is a perfect opportunity for Wolves to really build on that win against Fulham, get another clean sheet and really propel themselves towards a top half finish because realistically, the squad they have and the manager they have, they should be pushing towards top 10 football. So I think this is going to be really comfortable for Wolves and I can't see anything else than a very comfortable home win.
Yeah, on paper, it's the most straightforward of fixtures, isn't it? As you said, Sheffield have the look of a team that have completely just abandoned this season. If I've done the maths properly, I think they're 18 points from safety as it stands with 21 points to play for. So if they lose this game, they are, I think, mathematically relegated with the exception of goal difference. But I mean, realistically, that's it, isn't it? So they do have nothing to play for. We have seen it in the past where teams, once they've got nothing to play for, then actually sort of start winning games because there's just the pressure's not there. They can just have a bit of fun. But unfortunately, with this team, I just don't think they're actually capable of doing that, even if they were just taking all the pressure off and going for it. So I think Wolves should find this game really easy. Wolves still have the potential to get a top half finish, even though that will be tough considering their recent run of results, aside from their last result, which was obviously the 3 points against Fulham. They did have a pretty poor run into that. But they've shown some better form in the last few games, regardless of the results. I mean, they only lost 1-0 to Liverpool. The result against West Ham, yes, they went 3-0 down and the defending was atrocious, but in the second half, they were well worth a point at least from that game. And if anything, they could have come back and won that if they'd had a couple more opportunities and their finishing had been a bit better. So they've definitely shown that they've got the ability still within that squad. A bit like what we were saying with West Ham, though, it will be interesting to see how they cope without Neto because he has been a really key player for them since the Jimenez injury. So you take those two out of the team now, and then obviously that's potentially a bit more of an issue. But if Adama Traore can score and carry on sort of the way he did against Sheffield United, then he could be the player to replace. But I feel like we've said that time and time again on this show that every time we sort of predict him to pick up some form and become a key player, he sort of drifts away into obscurity again or picks up an injury. But at some point, that prediction's going to come true. So I'm going to do what I've done many times and back Adama Traore to score in this upcoming game. I've gone for a Wolves 2-0 victory, and I think it will be a nice, easy one for them. I don't think they'll really have to get out of second gear to achieve it.
Yeah, it'd be a surprise if they did. I think those injuries will hurt Wolves going forwards. But like you said, I think looking towards Adama Traore is the way to go. I think you can even play him through the middle at this point. I think that pace is going to be more than enough to worry the Sheffield United defence. And Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how Wolves finish the season, because their next 4 fixtures, including this fixture here against Sheffield United, are Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom, and Brighton. If they can get 4 wins out of those games, that's really going to put them in a great place. For the end of the season, they could easily push towards 9th or 8th place in the league. So it's a real crucial time for them in the Premier League, and I think it's deserved. I think they've struggled through the season without their talisman. To be without your star player for almost 6 months is always going to be a struggle for any team. But I think they've dealt with it pretty well, and yeah, I think it'd be a credit to the management and the squad if they can go on to really finish the season positively.
Okay, so up next, Arsenal taking on Fulham at the Emirates, so a home game for Arsenal. Sort of a fixture that in history you would say Arsenal should be winning comfortably. And looking at the form of the two teams this season, you'd say it should probably be the same again. Although having said that, Arsenal have still had some worrying moments in the last few games, but they had a very comfortable victory against Sheffield United in their last time out, whereas Fulham are coming off the back of 4 consecutive defeats. And obviously it feels like that mini revival that Fulham had is well and truly over. And with the sort of results that have been happening around them, as we've just been saying about Newcastle picking up plenty of points, Brighton have well and truly sort of pulled away from that area, and even Burnley, although they've not had the best of times in the last few games, they're still sort of managing to stay out of the relegation zone. It does really feel like Fulham have just left it too little too late to actually get out at this stage. So those last 4 defeats, I think, have just doomed them to miracles now to achieve getting out of this relegation battle. And I think, sadly, a game against Arsenal is not something that you look to as a good opportunity to pick up 3 points and drag yourself up the table. So they're going to be going in, I think, with a sense of it's a bit of an ominous game and probably a bit of a loss before it's even started, which is disappointing. But I think, unfortunately, that's just the way they're going to view it. Whereas Arsenal will be going in thinking that this is a great opportunity. They'll have been playing 20th place in the league, followed by 18th place. And that's a great moment for them to try and push up, especially with Tottenham losing and dropping points around them. They'll view it as an opportunity to push up above Tottenham and get one over on their local rivals as well. So again, I think this should be a fairly comfortable victory for the home team in this game as well. And I'm just going to go straight in and say I've gone for a 3-0 win for Arsenal. We've seen Lacazette on good form in the last game, and you can see him continuing it into this one and having a bit of a field day against the Fulham defence.
Yeah, it's difficult to look past that prediction, to be honest. I think it's going to be pretty one-sided. The only thing worth bearing in mind is that Arsenal do have a very crucial Europa League game this week on Thursday night. They've currently 1-1, and they'll have to go away from home to Prague to get a result in that game. And I think the fact that this is a Sunday 1:30 kickoff could be crucial. It doesn't give the players too much time to recover from their midweek game. And going into this game, I think Fulham will probably try and play on that a little bit, because Arsenal will have no choice but to play a full-strength team on Thursday night. So going into this game against Fulham, they'll be hoping that they can fight through that fatigue and get another positive result. Because like you said, there are teams ahead of them who are slipping up left, right and centre, and it leaves a great opportunity for Arsenal to try and get into those, maybe not Europa League places, but they can definitely get up to 7th. But I think they are going to prioritise the Europa League this season. So if they can get through, I imagine they might take one eye off this game, and that's what Fulham will be playing on. But like you said, I think Fulham have kind of lost the chance now to capitalise and pull away from danger, because those last 4 losses are all games really that they've been in, minus that Manchester City one. I think against Leeds, they definitely could have got something out of it. Against Aston Villa, you'd be expecting to get something out of that game, but they crumbled again. And then just as you think they're going to get a positive 0-0 draw against Wolves, deep into added time, Adama Traore smashes one past your keeper, and that's kind of, the demoraliser, and it kind of knocks you out. And they've had a lot of those this season, and they kept bouncing back, kept fighting. I think it's only going to take one more heavy defeat, and they're going to lose all faith. So this is a huge game for them with just 7 or 8 games left in the Premier League. If you don't get a good result in this game, you're 6 points away from safety, and the game's almost up for you. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens on Thursday night. And if Arsenal do get the win there, I'm sure this will be slightly easier for them. But again, I think there are lots of permutations that go into this fixture. I've again though gone for a Arsenal win, but I think it's going to be a bit closer than a 3-0. I've gone for a 2-1. I think Fulham will start bright, maybe get a goal, but I think Arsenal's quality on the pitch will probably just about see them through, which will cap off a really good week for them if they do get that win in the Europa League as well.
Yeah, definitely. If they manage to win midweek and win at the weekend, then it will be sort of 3 consecutive victories in all competitions, and there'll be 3 really vital wins for them as well. You have to think, though, if they do lose midweek, there's a potential that their morale could really be hit from that, because realistically, as you just said, there's a limit to how far up the table they can go with their remaining fixtures, and you'd think they've probably left it a bit too late to get themselves really into contention for a European place. So if they drop out of the Europa League, that's almost like their season's over to an extent because they've not got a lot to play for. So from Arteta's point of view, I think he'll really be viewing that game on Thursday night as a massive, massive must-win game. Just to keep the morale up for the remaining Premier League games and give them something to fight for towards the end of the season. But yeah, I think we're both fairly comfortably agreed that regardless of the result on Thursday, it should be a win for Arsenal on Sunday. But definitely worth bearing in mind those midweek fixtures always do have the potential to throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, and I think going forward to the rest of the season, it's going to play a huge part in a lot of team seasons. We've seen Manchester City obviously weaken their team significantly last weekend because they had a Champions League match in midweek. And I can see other teams picking up great results because of that. So it'll be very interesting to keep an eye on Arsenal's form and other teams in European competition, because ultimately teams at this stage of the season will start to prioritise one competition over the other. So I think Arsenal will be playing with one eye on the Europa League. I think that is probably their priority this season. So we might see one or two upsets going on this season, but I do think it'll probably be one step too far for Fulham this weekend. All right, moving on then. We have second place Manchester United versus 16th place Burnley. Another game that on paper looks pretty simple to predict. Manchester United got a really good win against Tottenham. They went behind, faced some adversity as well, had the goal ruled out, which looked a bit controversial from my point of view. I thought that it was very unlucky to have that Cavani goal ruled out from the foul that McTominay allegedly had, but they did well to battle past that, got the equaliser, and then in the second half they really did the better team. They showed their quality. I think players now are starting to find their feet in this team. Even Paul Pogba, I think he's now playing really well week in, week out. Something that Man United fans, I'm sure, were calling for months and months and months. He's finally doing that, and we're seeing the results. I think Manchester United really are in a funny place this season in that they're nowhere near the title, but they're going to solidify second place pretty soon. And then all they've got to fight for is the Europa League. So it's interesting for them in terms of priorities, because the Europa League is something I'm sure they'll be prioritising over the Premier League eventually, because I think they're well clear of Leicester at this point. They're too far behind Man City to title challenge. Will that affect their Premier League form? I'm not so sure. I think their squad depth is going to be really important going forwards. And I think they do have it as well. I think we saw at the weekend with Cavani coming into the team, someone of that quality to just bring into the team and immediately have that impact is absolutely huge at this stage of the season. So it's really difficult to look beyond Manchester United in this one, especially after Burnley's result of the weekend, a 2-1 defeat against Newcastle. And then you slap on that defeat against Southampton as well when they were 2-0 up. I think morale must be pretty low at the moment for them, losing to two teams who are pretty much around the same place in the league as them. So, yeah, it should be fairly plain sailing for Manchester United. But at the same time, Burnley are capable of upsets. They're capable of making it difficult for opponents. But I do think United will just have too much on the day. And, I think it's going to be really comfortable.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, this, because as you said, on paper, it should be a really comfortable game for United. They're cruising at the real top end of the table, whereas Burnley are struggling. But the one thing that makes me wonder whether they might find it a bit difficult is just the style of play that Burnley have and the style of play that we normally see Man United thrive against are two very different things. Burnley, as we know in this kind of game, will set up with a very rigid formation, and they'll sit back and they won't really worry about letting United play it around outside the box because they're confident enough in their ability to soak up that pressure. And we saw them do it in that famous victory that they had at Anfield to end Liverpool's winning streak or unbeaten streak at their home stadium. They soaked up the pressure for 90 minutes and they got the one goal that they needed and they won the game. And that's often the way that Burnley get their results against the big teams. We've seen time and time again, United really struggle to break down teams that play like that. They've obviously won their last 4 games, United, but the game that they didn't win just before that was the 0-0 against Crystal Palace, which are a team that played a very similar style of football as Burnley tend to play, soaking up the pressure and not giving United the chance. And where we've seen United really thrive is where teams allow them to play and they open up and they hit them on the counter-attack. And that's where United score plenty of goals. They've done it against plenty of teams this season. Man City game being a good example where they just sort of allowed that to happen and that was a good opportunity for United to get the win. I wonder whether that sort of clash of styles could potentially impact the result, but having said that, I do still think United should win it, just with the quality they've got in that team. But I don't necessarily think they'll find it as easy as you maybe suggested. I've gone for a narrow win, a 1-0 win for United. I don't think they'll really care. I think they will definitely be focusing more on the Europa League at the moment. So as long as they get the points, they won't really care the manner of it. And I think they'll probably have enough to just squeak out that 1-0 win and walk away with 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, I can see your point of view. Burnley definitely can make life difficult for opponents, and they have done all this season and previous seasons in the Premier League. It's what they're almost renowned for at this point. But I do think Manchester United is sort of coming into their kind of, how they finished last season in terms of just blowing teams away, scoring goals, outscoring opponents, and getting wins fairly comfortably. And to me, it seems like they're kind of finding their rhythm a little bit. Whereas for so long this season, they kind of looked a little bit like they were fluking wins and getting wins, but like having to graft pretty hard for them. But I thought that Tottenham win kind of showed just how easy they can make it if they really try. A lot will depend on their Europa League game in the week, as we've mentioned before with Arsenal. I think they've got a 2-0 lead, unlike Arsenal, so they don't have to worry too much about not getting a positive result. I think they'll set up to not concede any goals and progress that way, and maybe rest some players and whilst doing that. And I think if they can give someone like Bruno Fernandes a rest for a game, or even Rashford, I think it would be great for them going into this game, knowing that they'll be up against a very physical defence and they'll have to be fully fit for it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the week. But again, I think it will be comfortable. I've gone for 2-0 actually. I think it's just one of those games where two sort of teams collide at the wrong time for Burnley, especially. I think Man United are just coming good and Burnley are just sort of coming to an end of a fairly impressive run of form. And I expect it to continue for a couple more games to come. So I think United should just about get the 3 points in this one.
Right, and that brings us on to the final Premier League game of the weekend, as it is. We've got some sort of strange Premier League fixtures coming up where the games sort of continue every day for a while. But the last one of sort of the traditional Premier League weekend is Monday night football at 8 o'clock. And that sees a really exciting game, I think, of Leeds taking on Liverpool. Two teams coming off the back of 3 consecutive wins in the Premier League. Leeds with obviously a fantastic victory against Man City. They played that game, I think, tactically to perfection. Yes, they were helped a bit by City, obviously resting some key players in the build-up to their Champions League game. But obviously it's still, it's Man City. They're still a financially formidable team throughout the squad. They've got really, really high value, very, very impressive players. So even when they do rest players, they've still got world-class quality throughout the team. And Leeds had to play that game to perfection to get a win. And I think they did. They even overcame the setback of having Cooper sent off. And obviously they still managed to hit City on the counter-attack on 2 occasions and get the goals that they needed. So fair play to Bielsa. He got that spot on and they got a huge victory there. And it will give them a huge amount of confidence going into the game against Liverpool, because realistically, if they can beat City, then they'll have every belief in the world that at Elland Road they can beat Liverpool as well. So I'm really excited about this game. I think it could be one of the best games of the season if it pans out the way it should, with two teams who've got the potential to score plenty of goals. I think hoping that it could be a bit of a goal fest, and I'm just hoping it doesn't do what normally happens when I predict a goal fest and become a really, really boring game. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know, what do you think? Are you expecting a similar sort of level of entertainment?
Yeah, it's definitely the game I'm looking forward to most out of these fixtures. I mean, we saw that Leeds performance against Man City was impressive in almost a non-impressive way. I mean, the football involved from Leeds wasn't impressive. They didn't play the most fluid, pressing, passing football, but at the same time, the way they defended against that Man City side, putting their bodies on the line, making great tackles all over the pitch. And I think it was just testament to Bielsa's work ethic in that the players didn't give up for 1 second. Once they went down to 10 men, they all tried even harder than they were before, covering gaps and making sure that Man City had no way through. It's something that we haven't really seen too much of this season from Leeds. They've always been prided on their attacking form and taking teams apart of their high intensity pressing game. But in this performance, I think we saw the grit that they have as well, and that they can grind out results even when the backs are against the wall. And the way they won that game in added time on the break was probably the most impressive thing, that Stuart Dallas had the legs still to beat 2 centre-backs and put the ball through Edison's legs. I thought that was a real indication as to how fit these Leeds players are, that they kept going to the final whistle and they still had more to give. Yes, it was against the Man City team who are weakened by squad's rotation, but at the same time, you can't take anything away from the performance. And it really was one of the better games this season, I thought. To see a team go to the Etihad and play the way they did and get the 3 points was refreshing to see, as most teams just go there and stick 5 men behind the ball and hope for the best. And Leeds definitely had a game plan and they executed it perfectly. Again, coming up against this Liverpool side, who finally got over their Anfield hoodoo with a 2-1 win against Aston Villa. They left it late, but Trent Alexander-Arnold again came up with the goods. And ever since the international break being dropped from that England side, we've seen just how determined he is to make amends and to try and impress the England boss, Gareth Southgate. And he has done that in 2 games already. I think he's just shown why he should be in the England squad, why he's the best left back we have. I think the way he's played in those two games has proved all the doubters wrong. I mean, that goal he scored at the weekend in added time when the pressure's on to try and get a result against Aston Villa at home, to pick up the ball at the edge of the box and curl it beyond the keeper like that was, just a sign of pure class in my opinion. And yeah, it's going to be a real good game to judge both teams, really, because both teams have won their last 3 games now, both bang in form. And you'd expect the winner of this match to probably propel themselves up the table. And if Liverpool do win this game, I can see them giving West Ham a good run for their money for that 4th place Champions League spot. It really is a difficult game to call, so I'm going to let you predict it first.
Yeah, I do think it's a difficult one. And as I said, I think it's going to be an entertaining one. I think there'll be plenty of goals. And when I was thinking about it, I almost sort of just had to pluck a random result out of the air because I just have no idea which way this game's going to go. You've got 2 managers who very tactically minded, know what they're doing. They do a lot of research on their opponents. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to which manager does the better job in preparation and which manager is able to get his team to implement the style of play that they need to achieve the result. But my prediction's based off my hope that they both just get it a bit wrong and it becomes a bit of a goal fest. So I've gone with a 4-2 win for Liverpool. I'm hoping it comes true because then I'll be thoroughly enjoying that one on Monday evening with a couple of beers after work.
Okay, that's made my prediction a little less exciting. Not by much, though. I've actually gone for a 3-2 Liverpool win, so 1 less goal, but equally very entertaining. I think Liverpool should just about be able to edge this game. I think they've got the quality on the pitch. Their centre-back pairing does worry me, though, so I do expect them to leak a couple of goals on the way to the win, but I think with the form of Trent and other players going forwards, I think Salah eventually will get going again. I think it could make for a really entertaining game, and I expect Liverpool to just about edge it. Right, okay, then moving on to the FA Cup games this weekend. I guess we wouldn't usually cover these, but due to the lack of fixtures and the fact they're all Premier League teams, it makes sense to at least preview them. 2 exciting looking games as well, more so one than the other for me. I'm not really looking forward too much to the game that Southampton are involved in, but we'll start with the other one, which is Manchester City versus Chelsea. 2 teams who are really, really impressive this season. Chelsea, ever since they've swapped manager, have been massively improved. I think Thomas Tuchel's come in and he's really changed this mentality in this Chelsea side. We saw it again at the weekend. They bounced back from their slightly embarrassing defeat to West Brom with a solid 4-1 win at Crystal Palace. I'm not sure what happened in that West Brom game. I think a number of things went wrong. The early red card definitely hindered them. And ever since that game, I think they've kind of put that to bed now and they've moved on, which is impressive to see mentality-wise, because I'm sure after your first defeat as manager of a football club, you must be wondering if the players have it in them to bounce back, and it's exactly what they've done. And it was impressive, their win at Crystal Palace as well. I thought players like Havertz and Pulisic, who had been absent for most of the season, turned up in that game, and they did look really impressive and made light work of Crystal Palace, as most teams have this season. Coming up against Man City, who will be in action again in the Champions League in the week. So it'll be very interesting to see what team they put out against Chelsea, because obviously they're prioritising certain competitions over others at the moment. I think they'll probably view the Premier League as being wrapped up at this point. So they can probably prioritise the FA Cup, Champions League, and I expect them to field a pretty strong team. Yes, I think they'll be put through their paces against Borussia Dortmund in the week, but at the same time, I think they'll be fit enough as professional football players to probably start this game too. Especially if they've got aspirations of winning the quadruple this season, they have to play their strongest team. So I expect them to go full tilt with this game. And I think if both teams field their strongest 11, it could make for a really entertaining game. So, yeah, I think I'm just about going to edge Man City in this one, but I do think it's going to be close. And I've actually predicted this game to go to extra time. And I think Man City might nick a winner in added time. So I've gone for 2-1 Man City.
Interesting. Very sort of specific prediction you've gone for there, but I like it. Yeah, I think what you were just saying about Chelsea bouncing back from their first defeat under Tuchel was 100% a massive moment for them, because going into that game, there must have been an element of doubt, like, is the honeymoon period over? Is that it? Are we going to now start suffering defeats all over the shop? And, they did exactly what they needed to do, which is they went 2-0 up within 10 minutes, I think. They just, right from the outset, they were flying forward. They got the 2 goals that they needed to make it comfortable. And after that point, really, there wasn't much of a contest. They knew at that stage that Crystal Palace weren't really going to come back at them. And then obviously the 3rd goal made that a lot more comfortable. So that must have been really pleasing for their manager to see that. And I think that will give them a good boost of confidence going into this. I think at the time of recording this, they're in action in the Champions League, but they've got probably, I would say, maybe the easiest opponents of all of the Champions League quarterfinals that are taking place. So they'll be feeling fairly relaxed about that one. And they've obviously got the extra day of preparation for this game over Man City. So all of the signs sort of suggest that in terms of form and preparation for it, Chelsea should be in the better frame of mind going into this game. However, City have, as you said, have got the incentive of that potential for the quadruple, whereas Chelsea have got the incentive of this being probably their main chance of a trophy this season. So it's definitely going to be an interesting game. Both teams need something very big from this game to get over their opponent, and I think it's going to be a really interesting one to see who it comes down to. I've gone for one extra goal than you. I've gone for a 3-1 Man City win, and I actually don't think it will go to extra time. I think City will probably, given their squad depth and their ability across the board, I think they'll be able to get the job done within 90 minutes. As good as Chelsea have been, I think City are on another level, and I think they'll be able to get that done fairly simply and get their way to the final.
Yeah, I think the only reason I'm predicting it to go to extra time is more tactically. I expect Thomas Tuchel to probably bring something different to this encounter than Frank Lampard did earlier in the season. I think we saw just how easy Man City overcame Chelsea earlier in the season, but I think Thomas Tuchel will now instill this belief that they're on par with Man City mentality-wise and that they can go toe-to-toe with them, which I think the players will probably believe until they start conceding a goal or two. But yeah, I think it'll be close. I think maybe it's the romantic in me just wants it to be a little bit dramatic and go to extra time and then have someone win in front of a crowd at Wembley, which would be great to see. Yeah, I think that would be great for everyone involved if Man City can win it like that. I think it will be, I guess it will enlighten the FA Cup, which has been a little bit maybe subdued this season without fans. I think the magic's been lost a little bit, but maybe in these games at Wembley, something can happen, a spark can be lit, and there's a little bit of magic, which everyone associates with the FA Cup.
Yeah, definitely. If there's a competition that suffered most from not having the fans, it's the FA Cup, because it really is. It feels like it's more of a competition for the fans than some of the tournaments that the teams play in, and it's brilliant that we are getting, although very small numbers of fans, there will be some fans in there, which will hopefully, that will be a nice moment for the players as well to see some of their fans back in the stadium. So yeah, hopefully a good moment, and hopefully for those fans that do get to go, hopefully they get a good spectacle, which I'm sure they will. And that brings us on to the second semi-final. Leicester are obviously taking on your team, Southampton, and I feel like, as you said, you're not looking forward to it too much. I can't really blame you, to be honest, considering what you've seen over the last few weeks. But then obviously, Leicester are coming off the back of a couple of defeats themselves and have shown their own frailties. So, I feel like this could be quite a good opportunity for Southampton. But at the same time, every time I seem to say that, it doesn't pan out that way. So I don't know. Are you at a stage where you think realistically you're not going to get your hopes up for this game at all, or is there still a part of you that thinks actually maybe we can do this and we can have an absolutely horrific second half of the Premier League season, but go on and actually get to an FA Cup final and maybe it alleviates the pain a little bit?
I mean, that's what I'm hoping. I think it's very, very optimistic to think that we can overcome Leicester in this fixture. I think they're a better team than us all across the pitch. They proved as much this season, sitting in third place in the Premier League. Yes, and a bit of massive ask for us to pick ourselves up after this latest defeat. I think the defeat against West Brom was something that no one really saw coming, the manner of it. In my opinion, it was the worst performance of the season, even taking into consideration that 9-0 against Man United. I thought we showed a little bit more heart that day. Despite conceding 9 goals, I thought we, created 1 or 2 opportunities that could have at least taken a little bit of respectability out of the game. But in this game, we showed nothing, absolutely zero. Even in the 93rd minute when we got awarded a penalty, we went on to miss it. And I think that just summarised everything that went on in that game. I thought tactically we were well off. I thought the manager took way too long to make changes at this stage of the season. You've got to make changes when you go down. You've got to respond to adversity. We were 2-0 down at half time and absolutely nothing changed. And for me, that's just huge red flags. You can't just sit by and watch a car crash. But that seems to be what Ralph does every time we go 2 or 3 goals down. He seems to just be content with watching the team battle against it, and we're not equipped to do so. And I think everyone realises that except him, which is odd to say the least. And he's going to have to really pick up the players after this latest defeat, because this is a huge game, probably the best chance we have to get to an FA Cup final in our recent history. We got to the FA Cup semi-finals a couple of seasons ago, but lost to Chelsea. I think against Leicester, especially their recent form, you'd probably expect it to be a much tighter game. I know they've lost their last 2 games. We've lost our last 3 out of 4. Neither team are massively in form. And you'd hope that maybe as a result, neither team finds it all that easy. I think a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have expected Leicester to maul us a little bit, especially after their demolition of Sheffield United. But I think it's going to be somewhat close, I hope. I do expect Leicester to be the better team on the day. I just hope that Ralph can really get into the players that this is a massive game for the football club. Getting to any cup final is a huge occasion for anyone, for any team. And I really hope that we can do it, which probably aided my prediction a little bit in that I don't have us losing the game. I have it going to penalties. I think it's going to be 1-1 in normal time. And I'm hoping that we can prevail on penalties. But if that does happen, I won't be able to watch it because, the nerves will be too much. But I think the only way we're going to win this game is by something lucky or a little bit of luck going our way. So I really hope we can take the game on and put our best foot forward, because we just haven't been doing that recently in the Premier League. And if we don't, and if we do get this wrong, it could be pretty humiliating.
Yeah, it feels like, it sounds silly. Obviously, it's an FA Cup semi-final. Of course, it's important, but it feels like it's your biggest, most important game of the season, because it makes the difference between this season potentially having something to it or just being a complete write-off of the season, sadly. And you mentioned the word car crash in terms of sort of watching the West Brom game, and it feels like the second half of your season has almost been like the entire thing's just been like a slow motion car crash, hasn't it? Like every time you think it might, you might get back control of it, it just flies off into another barrier somewhere, and it's been massively disappointing to watch from your point of view, I know. And I think this game is a huge opportunity to put a positive view on this season, because let's be honest, if you were to go on and get to an FA Cup final, that will be what this season will be remembered for in the years to come. It won't be remembered for how disappointing the league form has been. It will be the fact that you got to the final. And I'm not going to say, you might go on and win it, because realistically, I'm predicting City to get to the final. And let's be honest, if it comes down to City v Southampton, there's only one favourite in that game, whether you want it to be the case or not. I think anyone that City play in the final, they're going to be the favourites. So it just has to be said. But I think you've got a really good chance in this game. From what I saw of Leicester at the weekend, if you can win the ball back against them when they're starting to build up their attack and hit them on the counter, they really, really looked poor in defence when we played against them. And the second goal we scored against them, it was almost like the defence didn't know what to do with the fact that we'd won the ball back and played it up the pitch quickly. And Johnny Evans in particular was just sort of like strolling back, didn't seem to even realise that there was a threat on until the ball was in the back of the net. Obviously we spoke while the game was on yesterday and couldn't understand why Adams hadn't started for you. And I think that probably suggests that he's fairly likely to start in this game. Potentially Walcott doesn't play in this one. And I think if you've got Adams playing up front with a couple of other players around him, there's a real potential for him to be that kind of player that leads the counter-attack and gets the pace and the strength forward and can hit Leicester where it hurts them. So I've gone for a 2-1 win for Southampton. I don't think it's going to be an easy win, but I think if you can get those moments and get them on the counter-attack, then it's a really good opportunity. They'll be hurting from their last couple of defeats, and I think you can capitalise on that. But equally, it does have to be said that if Leicester come out all guns firing like they have done at other times of the season, it could be a very different story. But obviously, I hope for your sake that I'm right and that's not what happens.
Yeah, if you can forward those observations on to Ralph, I'm sure he'd appreciate the tactical insight. And if that doesn't happen, I expect it to be just as bad as that West Brom game. I think you've got to change up the system. You can't be predictable in this game. You've got to throw something at Leicester that they haven't seen before to get anything out of this game and make the final. So I'm optimistic. I don't think I'm as optimistic as you. I don't know if I could predict us to win a game at the moment, but lottery of penalties are an amazing thing, and I think that's probably quite a likely outcome the way we've been playing. Okay, with 9 or 8 games left this season, it's time to make some predictions, I think. I mean, there isn't long to go, and I think it's about time we try and nail down who's going to finish in what places in the Premier League. I mean, we'll start off with the top 4. I think we all know who's going to win the league this season, Man City. So for the other places in the top 4, I mean, they're fairly up for grabs. I think Manchester United are pretty solid in that second spot. They've got a nice 7-point gap to Leicester below them. Leicester are the team who are in danger of dropping out of that top 4, in my opinion. I think West Ham have a really good chance of finishing in the Champions League. I expect them to probably get 1 or 2 good results before the end of the season, which should just about see them, if not in 4th, then in 5th. But I guess my prediction for the top 4 will be Man City winning the league, Man United to finish 2nd, Chelsea to finish 3rd is my prediction, and West Ham, unbelievably, against all odds, to finish 4th.
Well, that is music to my ears, and if that happens, I'll be absolutely delighted. For me, it's really tricky. I've gone obviously the same top 2 as you, Man City and Man United. I've predicted Leicester to drop down to 4th, actually. So obviously that leaves 3rd place up for grabs. And being the typical pessimistic myself, I've not put West Ham in third place. I think we've still got some huge games coming up, and I am worried about the injuries that we've got. So I think there's a potential for us to drop out of those places. But I've actually gone for Liverpool to finish third. I think against all odds at some stage of this season, if I'd said, around the time when they were really, really struggling that they were going to finish third in the league, I'd have been laughed at. But of all the teams, I think their fixtures in the run-in are fantastic. They showed that they have still got their fight left in that game against Aston Villa. And I think two of their key players that have really been struggling for form recently, Salah and Trent, obviously picked up goals in that game, and that will be a huge confidence boost for them. They've got no other competitions to play in at this stage. They've got that benefit that they can literally just focus on the Premier League now. And I think they will throw absolutely everything at it to get back into the Champions League spaces, because realistically, they know that some of those players will think twice about sticking around if they're not in the Champions League next year. So I think they'll push on. I can see, I'm not going to predict them to win every single game between now and the end of the season, but I think they'll come close to doing it with the fixtures they've got. So yeah, for me, it's City in first, Man United in second, Liverpool third, and Leicester getting the final Champions League space in fourth. But that does lead us on nicely to who I think is going to finish in the top six. So I'll quickly tell you who I've got for there, and then I'll let you lead on to who you've got. So I've actually gone with Chelsea to finish fifth. I think they've got also got some decent fixtures coming in, and as we've said earlier, they've got some good form. And then I've gone with West Ham to finish sixth. So I think taking into consideration, as I said, injuries and fixtures, etc., I think we will still finish in the top six, but I think only just on the edge, and I think it will be a fairly nervy run-in for us. But I do, for the first time this season, I'm actually going to back us to finish in the European places, which could be the most dangerous thing I've ever done, because normally doesn't play out that way when I predict good things for us. But yeah, so that's my top six: City, United, Liverpool, Leicester, Chelsea, and West Ham.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you went more pessimistic than that. I'm sure you were wondering whether West Ham actually will get European football this season. I think maybe you remove that love and bias that you have towards West Ham, and I think realistically, looking on form, they're almost odds on to get European football of some sort this season. I think it would be extremely unjust if they don't. The football they've played, the results they've had, and the way they've been playing, especially under David Moyes and his tactics, has been really refreshing. And I think the reason that I have them in fourth is just to break the mold a little bit. I think it would just be really, really great to see another team up there fighting for a competition that they haven't been involved in possibly in their entire history. So it'd be great to see West Ham there. So below them, I've actually gone with Liverpool. I think they'll be the one team who'll give you the closest fight for that Champions League spot. Like you said, their fixtures are great. They're coming into good form now, and I do expect them to push on and give you a really good go for it. And then just below them, I have Leicester, who I think are the one team who are going to really suffer in the run-in. Some of the injuries they have, obviously missing Harvey Barnes at the moment, is really, really hurting them. And with some of their players not being, I guess, professional enough to respect some of these COVID guidelines is a bit worrying for me, because you should know at this point, especially going into the last 10 games of the season, just how crucial it is to have all your players fit. And when you've got players running about doing all sorts, apparently, deep into the night at the weekend, I think it's worrying for Brendan Rodgers that he doesn't have control over that squad, regardless of whether you're going to discipline them going forwards. That would put huge doubts in my mind in those players for the rest of the season. So I think Leicester could be the ones that actually suffer the most in the next couple of weeks. So I have them down in sixth. So just to confirm my top six, then I've got Man City winning the league, United finishing second, Chelsea to finish third, West Ham, music to your ears, finishing fourth. And then I've got Liverpool and Leicester in the remaining European spots. So Tottenham, Everton, and Arsenal will be the teams missing out on European football, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we've both gone for a sensible top six. But the one thing I would say is, the last few games of the season, you always get some weird results, especially the last day of the season. There's always some absolute wacky scorelines that come out of there. I think the 5-5 between Man United and West Brom a few seasons ago it was in Ferguson's last ever season. I think that always springs to mind as a result that you just wouldn't see any other weekend in the Premier League other than final day of the season. So there's always a potential for some strange things to happen, but I think realistically, if you're going with a sensible approach, we've gone for the correct top six there. Talking of weird and wacky results and things changing, that obviously brings us up to the bottom three, where I think we'd probably both agree that the three that are in the relegation zone now are fairly odds-on favourites to go down, and it's going to take something fairly spectacular for somebody else to join in that mix. But don't want to speak for you too much, but personally I've gone for the same bottom three as it is now, and I don't think the positions will change either. I think it will be Sheffield United finishing rock bottom, West Brom above them, and then Fulham just missing out on survival in the 18th position.
Yeah, I mean, you would have been right to speak for me there. I think I'd be stupid to do anything else other than predict those three teams to go down. I think they've all had opportunities over the course of the season to put a run together to get out of that danger zone. But for me, I think Fulham have well and truly missed the boat now. They've had opportunities, they've had games that they should have been winning, and they haven't done that. So the only change I'm going to make actually is to see West Brom sneak above Fulham. They'll still get relegated, in my opinion, but I do think they've got more about them at this stage of the season, and I expect them to pick up a couple more wins that could see them finish above Fulham. So yeah, Sheffield United to finish bottom, Fulham, unfortunately, to finish 19th, and West Brom just missing out in 18th.
Okay, and that leads us on to the final prediction that we're going to do for the run-in, and that's who's going to finish as the top goal scorer. I'm going to let you go first on this one. Obviously, there's quite a few candidates up there. Just to give a very quick rundown, you've got Harry Kane and Mo Salah at the moment tied in first on 19 goals each, followed by Fernandes on 16, Bamford 14, and Calvert-Lewin 14, and Heung-min Son on 14. Those are sort of probably the key candidates to get up there. And then just below them, you've got Lacazette, Gundogan, Vardy, and Watkins. So out of those 9 players, who do you think's most likely to come out on top? Or do you think there's a wild card waiting in there somewhere who could spring up at the last minute and smash in a load of goals and fly themselves to the top of the table?
Yeah, I mean, Iheanacho is having a good run at the moment, but I don't think he's going to score 10 more goals to put him on the top of the list, unfortunately. I think it's going to be between the two that are up there already. I think Harry Kane and Mo Salah have been probably the two most likely goal scorers this season. Yes, Mo Salah's been through some bad patches, as has Kane at points. But for me, I'm going to go for Mo Salah. I think he's got a bit more going for him in terms of the fixtures they have coming up, the form they've now hit, the fact that he's the set piece taker, he's going to be on penalties, and he just looks to be a bit more like his old self, getting in the position to score goals. So for me, I think mainly down to the fixtures that Liverpool have, I expect him to probably get 1 or 2 more goals than Harry Kane, which is a bold shout because Harry Kane's been in great form recently, and he could equally, get a bag full before the end of the season. But I think maybe Mo Salah will end on 24, 25 goals, and that should be enough to win in the boot, I think.
Yeah, sadly, it's not very exciting, but I have gone for the exact same prediction as you. I think when you look at all of the factors, fixtures, form, what they've got to fight for, the team that plays around him, I think Salah's definitely the obvious candidate to finish on top. The one thing I will say, though, is even if Kane doesn't win the Golden Boot, he, I think, will go down in history as having one of the best ever seasons as a striker, purely based on the number of assists that he's contributed as well. His stats for goals and assists combined are absolutely unreal for someone that plays through the middle. You don't see those kind of assist stats from a striker very often, and I think he deserves a huge amount of praise for that. And it's one of many, many reasons why he is one of the best strikers in the world, because he doesn't just score goals. He has so much more to his game than that. And just yet another reason why there's the best clubs in Europe will be looking at him as a potential transfer that they'll be looking at for the summer. In terms of other players that could potentially get themselves up there, I mean, obviously Patrick Bamford has exceeded expectations for a lot of people this season, but I think realistically he's going to really struggle to do better than, he's not going to score 5 more goals than Mo Salah scores over the next few games. But I think the fact that he's sat in the 4th highest goal scoring position for this season is a huge testament to how much of an improvement he's made himself this season, and just to how good Leeds have been overall. It feels like a topic that's been done to death a bit, how good Leeds have been and how well they've done considering it's their first season. But I think him being in that position absolutely epitomises it. And it's a great achievement for him personally and for the squad as a whole to see one of their teammates up there at the top of that kind of chart with such huge global names surrounding him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, it's pretty refreshing to see 5 strikers on that list, or in the top 8 strikers in the Premier League, 5 of them are British or English. So it's a great sign for the league that we've got so many players in and around scoring goals. But yeah, I think it's going to be between the two at the top. And I think they're both won the Golden Boot already. So it'll be interesting to see who can add to their collection. But yeah, I think Mo Salah is probably just about going to edge it, despite some of the efforts of the players below him. I think he's just got that experience, and when it matters, I think he's the one who's going to deliver the goods. So yeah, I think we're both joint on that one. All right, that brings an end to this episode of the 3PL podcast. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks' time to preview more games in the Premier League as we approach the final 5 games of the season. Until then, make sure you're following us on social media. That's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And also make sure you are subscribed on YouTube to never miss an episode. We'll catch you all again in a couple of weeks.